You can.
You can, yeah, somewhere in there. Okay, excellent. Okay, so good evening, everyone. You are at the Jenks Center, so welcome to our online programming. Just a few comments before we get started this evening. So this event is made possible by a generous grant from the Cummings Foundation and also from the Winchester Senior Association. A little information just to make the evening go a little smoother. So please be aware that this event will be and is being recorded. So if you don't want to be on the screen, so you can just turn off your camera. And if you have any questions, we don't want to interrupt the interview. So if you would put them in the chat and then we'll address them at the end. And please stay muted during the program. Also, you'll receive an online survey that meets the requirements of the Cummings grant. So we ask that you fill that out for us. So in June, we do have a walk at Horn Pond with our ornithologist Neil Hayward. I do regret that.
Yes, I'm still here. Hang on just a minute. Oh, that's okay. Okay, I'm fine now. So I talked to Marcia today, and she said that we could send directly. We could instead of having you have to do it for all of us, we could all directly contact Lena and tell her, and then pay her when we got there. But if it's already met, we.
Okay.
What was that?
Yeah, there's a
someone talking.
Okay.
I have to go back.
Please mute yourself, folks. Please mute yourself so we can continue.
We'll have to take that out of the video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to start over, hon?
No, well, I'll just say that Neil Hayward is in June. He's on the 25th Saturday. That's 11 a.m. At this time, it's full. And then we have an evening with Henry David Thoreau, our Richard Smith. He's going to come in costume and share some insights about Thoreau and some wonderful readings.
He's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, he's wonderful. And he's going to be in character, so that should be very interesting. And then we have a virtual program on the 30th, which is, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday, with Jane Blair, and she is Arts Matters. She has her own company, and she's going to come and talk about animals in art, wild and domestic. So she is an artist too. So that's going to be interesting. So please sign up for these two events. So you can still do that online right now. And then in July, I don't believe these are up online yet, so you might want to jot them down if you want to be part of this. We have an in-person artist coming, and she's going to talk about the Turner exhibit. She actually created a piece for the MFA. She's going to share that video with us and show us what she did for that exhibit. Then we have in-person, we're going to have Cheryl Fay come back. She's an actress. She's going to do a one-woman show of Amelia Earhart, pioneer in aviation. So that is on Saturday the 9th at 11 a.m. Then we have virtual Composers Corner with guest Ken Field, and of course, Andrew, my wonderful husband, is going to be the host. Then we're going to bring back Dancers Dialogue. Pamela Weiss is going to be our host, and we're going to have a guest, Sally Slagle, and she is going to, after being a guest, she's going to take over the Dancers Dialogue going forward. So that should be interesting to get to meet her. And then we have in person the Horseless Carriage musical event with Diane Taraz, and that will be on the 25th at 7 p.m. She's wonderful. She has an amazing voice. And then we have an in-person event, the Winchester Cultural District and Winchester Council. They're working together to support the arts of Winchester. So that will be on Wednesday, the 26th at 7 p.m. And that's a long title. Okay, so that brings us to to tonight with our guest, Bob Nieske. So I'm going to close and stop sharing here. But I still want to talk about Bob and introduce him. So just give me a minute to do that. I'll pull it up here. So we have composer and bass player Bob Nieske. So he is one of the finest jazz composers, bassists in New England. He directs the Jazz Ensemble and teaches jazz composition and arranging, jazz history, and an introduction improv class. And as bassist, composer, and band leader, his projects include a suite of his jazz trio and the Lydian String Quartet, documented on his critically acclaimed CD, Simplicity. And Bob has worked with Jimmy Guffrey.
Jeffrey.
I'm sorry.
That's all
I'm
right.
not the musician in the family, so I read these. I don't know who everyone is. And George Russell, Stefan Grabelli. I hope that's right.
That's
Duke
good.
Robillard, okay, David Grisman, John Medeski, and many others. So he's a professor of practice at Brandeis and on the faculty of New England Conservatory. So I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful husband, Andrew Celentano, who's also a local pianist and composer himself. And so thank you for being here. Thank you both for being here so much. We definitely love that you're here and doing this. So
Thank you, sweetheart. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. I love the way she calls me the wonderful husband. I wonder if she has like a not so wonderful husband someplace else.
I don't know.
I'm the wonderful husband, and then she's got anyway. I'm really excited about this. Months ago, after I'd interviewed Joe Mulholland, and by the way, this is a special treat for me because I'm actually in Joe's house tonight. I'm actually in a conference in Boston, a medical conference, and usually I'm at home when I do this, but Joe is kind enough to let me stay with him tonight, and we're doing this from here. And Joe some months ago said, there's a lot of composers out there that are intelligent and bright, and but their works are kind of predictable and derivative. But I got to tell you, this guy, Bob Nieske, he's just such a creative personality on top of all that, you got to interview him. And so here he is tonight in full regalia. And truth to be told, when I saw how he was dressed up, I had to go back and change into a better shirt because, he just sets the bar so high. But welcome, Bob. I really am glad that you're spending time with us tonight. I spent about a week listening to a lot of his music. Certainly can't listen to all of it because he's done so much. And what I love about it is it's jazz, but it's also inspired by many things and quite accessible and covers a number of different genres and instrumentations. And it's just wonderful to listen to. And some of you tonight have joined, I think, because I sent you the first song that we're going to do tonight, which is O Come, O Come Emmanuel, a Christmas song from his Christmas album. And he did some really clever things with it. But before we get into all that, I just want to kind of explore a little bit about who is this guy, Bob Nieske? And, I actually spent some time online. There's wonderful interviews, at least a couple of interviews that I listened to. And I love the one where he talks about his early days in the music, his introduction to music and his frustration on the clarinet and his path. Like he wasn't born deciding he wanted to be, a famous jazz composer. He had other ambitions too. Somehow the doors opened in various directions and he ended up where he is today, which we're very glad he did. But so Bob, maybe with that introduction, you can kind of give us a little bit of your background story.
Sure. Well, the clarinet, my parents were rather strict. And if you were going to, they wanted us to play instruments.
Were they musical, by the way? Were they?
On my mother's side, her mother's side were very musical. Actually, her mother, my grandmother, this is back before she was born in the late 1800s, and at that time, not in the late 1800s, but when she was in her 20s, which would have been say like 1918 or something like that, 1920. She had a job at a department store playing piano, and not to entertain people, but they didn't have records. They didn't have record departments or record stores, or certainly not iPods and anything like that. So what they did have was they had a sheet music department. So people would go and they would say, you know, what's this? This looks interesting. What's it sound like? And they would bring it over to my grandmother, and she would play it for them. And then they would decide if they wanted to buy it. If they bought it, of course, they'd have to go home and learn how to play it themselves.
Right.
But back in those days, people were much more apt, like ordinary, people who, if you wanted music in your home, you had to make it yourself, which is a very different. Even back then, radio was not a big
Right.
a big deal. So if you wanted music, you had to make it, and I think, in a lot of ways, that's probably a good way to be, because you'd be a more informed listener, and you'd have more of an understanding of what it is. But I digress, because what the story you really want is why I don't play the clarinet anymore. That was my first instrument. My mother thought that maybe I should play the clarinet, and I thought, okay. So I started, playing it. We rented a clarinet, and I got I forget my teacher's name, but I started taking lessons every week. Half-hour lesson, probably for $2. And it was November, and I had to practice. All of my friends, it was like a Saturday, a weekend day in November, and all of my friends were outside. I was probably maybe 11 years old, 10 years old, something like that. My friends were outside playing, and I was playing the first Noel, and had some high notes in it, and I got Noel, Noel, that note there, and I made this horrible squeak, and I was just so frustrated. My friends were out having a good time, and I just took the clarinet like this, and I was sitting next to my bed, and I went, pow, like that, and it broke right in half, and that was the last time I played clarinet. And my parents, they took it pretty well. They didn't say you can't play another instrument. So, although it was a rented instrument, I'm sure they had to pay for the instrument, but it probably wasn't too expensive. After that, I went on to guitar, which I loved, and I played guitar for maybe 2 years. My guitar teacher couldn't support himself as a guitarist, so he played bass on the side, both upright bass and bass guitar. I noticed that during my guitar lessons, he had this beautiful red bass guitar with all these knobs on it, and I said, I think I want to try that. So then we started having lessons half on bass and half on guitar, and I ended up being more interested in the bass, and he said, if you want to be a bass player, you need to go study with a classical teacher, and you need to play upright, because that's the real bass,
The real deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that. I played upright. I was studying to be a classical bass player. At this point, I started the summer before my freshman year of high school, and I played through the junior year of high school. I played in the Greater Boston Youth Symphony. I played in the Springfield Youth Symphony. I was in Massachusetts All-State, and all of that stuff. And my hand started bothering me. So I thought, I don't know if I think it was a psychological thing that I wasn't ready to make that kind of commitment. Even though I wanted to go to music school, I played bass guitar in a little jazz group, and I loved that also, but I never played but I never played. I just muted that person there.
Thank you.
But I never played upright bass in a jazz setting in high school. So anyway, I quit playing the bass, and I had been composing throughout high school. I was always fascinated with how, how two notes, I have my little... I was always fascinated how like two notes, interact and, the vibrations that they make. So I was writing pieces in high school. I wrote a suite for brass quintet. I wrote a couple of choral pieces. I wrote a wind ensemble piece for my high school wind ensemble, which was actually was a good group.
Wow.
And I had all of those things not played in concerts. Actually, I think one of the choral things was done in a concert. But there was enough there that I thought, well, if I'm not a bass player, maybe I can still be a musician. I'll be a composer.
Yeah.
And I applied to New England Conservatory, and I got in, which was a surprise, kind of a surprise to me.
It's a real rush to have your stuff played, isn't it? When someone,
it's wonderful,
plays your
yeah.
stuff, an amazing feeling, yeah.
Although it can be horrifying, it depends on the performance.
Yeah.
And
well, back then you didn't have a synthesizer. You couldn't mock it up and make sure it all sounded right. You had to really hear it in your head.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So anyway, I got into the jazz thing through being a composer at New England Conservatory. All of my fellow composition students were improvisers, and so my composition teacher Tom McKinley was a terrific jazz pianist. So when I got into the conservatory, I played tuba for a little while, and then my hand felt okay, so I thought, well, maybe I'll go back to guitar. And I studied classical guitar at the conservatory for my first 2 years there. Then my hand felt okay playing guitar, so I thought, well, maybe I can play the bass again. So I went full circle not back to the clarinet, but I went back to the bass.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just think I realized why you went to tuba. Does tuba only use the right hand to do the?
Well, tuba only uses the right hand, and also I could already read bass clef. So
and your left hand was the one that was bothering you, right?
Correct. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
That's why it was tuba. I was trying to figure out why you got the tuba. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even think of. Well, I always liked the low notes.
Yeah.
Tuba's too hard. Tuba's a really hard instrument.
Yeah. Really? Huh.
Yeah, any brass instrument is a beast. So anyway, I started playing bass in an improvisational way, and never really. I could still, I still played, a little bit of classical stuff, but just for exercises, because that's scales and arpeggios and things like that. But from that point on, I was a classical composer and a jazz musician.
And what I like about that is it lends itself to this first song we're going to play. If unless you want to say a few more things, but this O Come, O Come Emmanuel is in part based on a Shostakovich symphony. Did you want to say a few more things before we get into that? Because it may be
sure.
Okay. So let me do this. Let me first get myself off the spotlight here so that we can have it. It's going to be you, and then I'm going to share a screen here.
Hey.
And there you are. And let's see. Here we go. Okay, and then let me get back to the one you were talking about earlier. So this, first of all, some background. This is the Shostakovich Symphony Number 13, Baba Yar, and I'm going to jump to the part. Let's see. It's
Hey, 99% of people with an IRA or 401k will not see this video, and that would be a tragedy.
No. Here we
go.
It
is.
So what I love is that you took that concept and you basically took it to a whole new level, and you superimposed that, or underimposed, whatever the opposite of that is, underimposed it, whatever, for O Come, O Come Emmanuel. And I think that it's really a wonderful thing. So here it is. I think this is especially interesting, especially with respect to when you talk about your fascination with how notes interplay with each other, because there's definitely a whole interplay going on here. And how did you even know the notes were going to work? Because, you know, I was thinking that, you know, there's such an intricate scaffolding going on here, and how maybe the notes don't always match up, but it sounds wonderful. So how you
Right.
It's just brilliant the way this came together.
Well, I took the main idea of that the Shostakovich thing. I changed the notes. They're not the. It's not the exact.
Inspired.
It's not
They're
the.
not stolen.
Yeah, it's they're. Yeah, I didn't steal. I stole the feeling of it.
Yeah, I would like to
And-
say you're inspired by it.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and I just put that down as kind of a pillow. And one thing that's interesting about it is the it's actually hard for me to talk over it
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll shut that off.
because
Yep.
I can't not listen to it.
Yeah, it really is amazing. Yeah.
So it's a the background. Turns into a background thing. That's the thing, and it's in 9. Me be do be do be do be do bo 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 be do bo. So it's 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3
Wow.
4. And so I put that down as an ostinato kind of thing, which is just a repeated phrase.
Sure.
And over the top of it, just really clearly the melody that everybody knows, you know. Which is clearly in 4/4. 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So you've got a little bit of a juxtaposition of something that's in a group of 9,
Yeah.
and then something that's in 4/4.
Yeah.
So it creates a kind of sort of a dreamy, kind of a
Exactly.
dreamy feeling to it.
Whole interplay. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also there are no chords for a while. The first part of it. There are no chords. It's just 2 lines.
Yeah.
And I've always really liked a linear approach to things, and even later on, the part where when you started to fade it out. So that first part was pure Shostakovich, and then this other little part with the answering. And then whatever it does, I'm a terrible pianist. that's also out of a Shostakovich thing somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's nothing. There's nothing earth-shattering about having a figure be answered, but
Of course, yeah.
but
I have
when
to tell
I
you,
was
when I go home this weekend, I'm going to try to play both those parts at the same time with my left hand and right hand, see if I get how far I get. But the engineering part of me would be worried about, does every note match up, and is there ever some dissonance? But if there is some dissonance, it's just beautiful. I mean, the whole way it comes together is just magnificent. So
thank you.
I could listen to this piece all day, but given that we only have about a half an hour left, I think I want to cover some other stuff with you. But that was
Sure,
just
I
wonderful.
I could say one little thing about dissonance
Yeah.
in relationship to linear music is the ear has this is my theory anyway. The ear is much more attracted to things that move through time, like from in our situation from left to right, or a melody 1 2 3 4, than things that happen at the same time. So if you have two lines going on, the ear is kind of, even if you have dissonances happening vertically,
Huh.
if
It forgives it, kind of.
it's exactly, that's a
Yeah.
great way to put it. It forgives it. It almost doesn't hear it
Yeah. Interesting.
because you're listening to the line.
There's a
you're
whole
hearing-
trajectory.
Yeah, you're hearing two lines and where they're going, and if the line makes sense, it almost doesn't matter so much what's happening vertically.
We have to call that the Nieske effect.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'll take credit for it. Yeah.
I love it. Well, let's go on to the next thing we have lined up, and there's so much to go through. So, but the next thing we want to talk about is your Marmalade mix. Do you want to talk a little bit about
Sure.
that again? Yeah.
Yeah, this is another one of my. I like to, for me, music is, it's like solving a puzzle. Like how can I put things together? It's not necessarily about trying to express a particular thought or emotion, even though you could, the people listening might have a lot. If you listen to the O Come Emmanuel, for some people that's going to be really a sad thing. For some people it's going to be really beautiful, depending on what your life's experience is.
Sure.
So for me, I don't really try to express a particular feeling. I mean, I enjoy the act of composing it, and there's a certain amount of joy to it that comes when you're trying to do a puzzle, you're trying to get the last piece, or not the last piece because the last piece is easy, but you're trying to do a jigsaw puzzle, and you found a piece, and then there's a particular type of satisfaction you get when you find where that piece goes, and you put it into the puzzle, you press it into the puzzle, and it's like, oh, that's beautiful. And there's a feeling. If there wasn't, people wouldn't go through the trouble of doing jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah.
There's something very rewarding about it, and a lot of what happens in music for me is that kind of thing. I'm trying to solve puzzles, even if when I'm playing the jazz, a jazz, even like a walking bass part through a jazz tune. It's a puzzle. I'm trying to solve the puzzle of figuring out how to, with just playing quarter notes, boom, 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 how to come up with an interesting way of playing quarter notes that makes the type of a melody that goes through the chord changes.
That's great. Yeah.
And
I never thought of it as a puzzle, but that's a cool way to look at it.
And so that's kind of how I look at it. And with this tune Marmalade, I thought, sometimes you get stuck, and you need some kind of inspiration. Whether you're, you know, a scientist or a painter or you know, or a, you know, composer. And so what some composers do is they try to you try to come up with something intellectual, and then you apply your, you know, musicianship to it, and some sort of inspiration or something, and you try to make something out of it that's a solid piece of work, you know. And so I was thinking, what if I take the first part of two scales, so the E major scale, and then a B flat major scale, and put them together. It also happens to be 2 whole steps and 2 half steps, and then 2 whole steps, and then 2 half steps. So in the classical world of, you know, theory and stuff that I studied in college, that would be called a symmetrical scale, because it's symmetrical.
Cool.
In other words, it's 2 whole steps, 2 half steps, 2 whole steps, 2 half steps, and it keeps repeating like that. The other symmetrical scales, you know, could be a whole tone scale. There are a ton of them. But anyway, I said, this is cool, and now what can I do with it? So that was setting up the problem. So once you set up the problem, then you go about trying to solve the problem. And so solving the problem and it always has to do with restrictions. Like a scale is a restriction. An instrumentation, a string quartet, that's a restriction. 2 violins, viola, and cello. Every restriction you impose on yourself is a way of forcing you to think creatively. So I put that restriction of that scale in there. I also put the restriction in of the instrumentation. I wanted to write a piece for my new band, which has trumpet, trombone, tenor saxophone, guitar, bass, and drums. And I wanted it to be, you know, maybe a moderate tempo, but not even that. So I just started playing around with it. And then you start playing around with it, and you start getting little ideas, little snippets, you know. Just something like that, 2 notes. And you start fooling around with it, and something catches your ear for one reason or another, and you say, okay, that's kind of cool. What do I do with that? Now, how do I work with that? And then this tune, Marmalade, came out. So if you wanted to play some of it, you could hear what I did. Everything in this song is based on that scale. All of the chords, everything that everyone is improvising over, is based on those 8 notes.
Let's give it a shot. I have to apologize because I scrambled from Boston and traffic was disaster. I normally open these all up and make sure there's no ads coming up first, so I apologize in advance if this comes up with an ad at the beginning.
That's okay. You'll also notice there are no chords in this. It's all lines.
I have to be candid with you. In my untrained ear, it just sounds like great jazz to me. But now that I know that there's a whole other layer of like this creative, intelligence on top of it, it makes it that much more interesting.
Ah.
We could listen to this all day, but we've got so much to cover. I wanted to ask you, how did your musicians handle it? Was it extra stressful to try to figure out the notes, or are they just so good they just read the notes as they are? I mean, I would find if I'm not in a normal scale that I would know, it'd be a stretch that must be incidentals all over the place or whatever. So,
well, they didn't. I actually used for the solo sections. I took the notes of the scale and made chords out of them. So, and then from making the chords out of them, the jazz musicians are used to reading chord symbols, which is, in some ways, if people listening are maybe familiar with Renaissance or actually Baroque music, that also used chord symbols, and they called it figured bass. Mm-hmm. They would give you the bass line, and then they would put, a 4 or a 6 above it, which would mean that the keyboard player, the organist, would play the root or the bass note, and then play a 4th above it and a 6th above it. And so the musicians I used, I explained to them about this scale, and I said, if you just play this scale, you could play this scale over anything, over any of the chords,
cool,
and it will work.
That's great.
That's
great.
But they didn't do that.
Oh, what did they do?
They read the chord symbols. So which means that when they're improvising, they're not really thinking about that particular scale. They're thinking about, because chord symbols can imply several different interpretations.
So if I say they could play anything within that chord structure and they're safe. Is that the way you think about it?
Yes.
Yeah. That's cool. Oh, that's very cool. All right.
Yeah.
God, we have. This is always frustrating because I want to have people know everything that you do. It's not gonna happen. But
no, that's fine. One thing
fine.
I could let me put out a plug from this. Just came out. I don't know if people can see it.
Oh, hang on a second. Let me stop sharing so that they can really see it. There we go.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Does it look like it's on my screen? It's backwards, but can you?
No, it's definitely right. Bob
Okay.
Nieske, 6.
So this is the band I wrote these 8 pieces for.
Great.
And I just got this in the mail today.
Wonderful.
It will be for sale, like I'm not going to. I have some that I can sell people individually, but you're not going to be able to go to a CD store and get this because you can't find a CD store. But you'll be able to get it probably within a couple of months. You'll be able to get it on iTunes and Amazon Music and Spotify and all of that stuff. Yep. Or if you want to, if you're old-fashioned like me and you want an actual copy of it, you could send me an email at my name, Bobnieske, all one word and all lowercase. At Gmail, send me an email and I'll send you one for you give me $10 and I'll send you one.
Yeah. You know what? When we usually when we close this out, we'll send a note to everyone that attended and all the registered ones. We'll make sure they know that. That's excellent.
Great.
Yeah. Please do that, folks. I'd rather have you support the musicians directly because Spotify pays like 2 cents or something ridiculous.
Yeah, if that, yeah.
let's give the composers what they're due. That's great. Okay, so the next one. Okay, let's get to the next one here because this is one of my favorites. This is keep on the wrong thing here. Sonata for flute and piano. A whole nother talk about different parameters or different rules to be within. Now you've got this flute piano concept. You want to talk about, before we get into it, just a little bit about the constructs on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's like I'm still straddling the my education at the New England Conservatory was, I have a master's degree, and my bachelor's and master's degree were both in classical composition.
Yeah.
The thing that it's kind of funny that the thing that I end up teaching is not what I studied, but it's the thing that I just learned by playing with my friends, jazz music. I never studied jazz music formally, although every time you play with someone, you're studying. When I play with Joe Mulholland, a great piano player, I'm studying. I'm hearing what he's doing. Oh, that's what okay. And then he'll say, well, maybe on this tune, maybe I want the bass to do this. Oh, okay, that's a great idea. So we're, so even if someone said, nobody is self-taught is what I'm trying to, what I'm trying to say. If you're learning anything, you're learning it by paying attention to what other people are doing. And
Joe is like a harmony genius. So any harmony stuff, man, Joe will tell you how to do it.
He actually he literally wrote the book.
Wrote the book, yeah.
Yeah. But this piece, so this was something that I had originally written a violin sonata for violin and piano for a friend of mine, Judy Eisenberg, who used to be in the Lydian String Quartet over at Brandeis, and she never played it. She looked at it, but she never played it. I don't think maybe she didn't like it so much, or who knows. But then many years later, 15 years later, I met this flute player named Linda Bento Ray, and she's good buddies with another friend of mine, and she said, I want you to write me something. So being, somewhat, I'm not lazy, but I'd like to get the most out of what I have. Sure. And I had this piece, and I knew I liked it for violin and piano. And I told her that. I said, well, I've got this sonata, and I could rewrite it for flute. And so I did, and it came out great. I redid some of the piano parts. If you're writing something for violin, you have the possibility of playing two notes at the same time, which you can't do on the flute. So I had to figure out, I had a lot of things that I had written on the violin that had, double stops, two notes at the same time. So I had to figure out how to make it work for the flute. Sometimes I would take out one of the two notes, or sometimes I would use the two notes melodically instead of at the same time. And she really liked it. And then she said, it's not long enough. So can you add a fourth movement? And I said, yeah, I can do that. So I did. So I wrote a fourth movement. I think the movement that you have is the second movement.
Yeah.
Now I'm not a piano player, and I stole a lot of stuff from Shostakovich for some of the piano flute things. By the way, Linda Bento Ray is the flute player on the Christmas stuff, and so when I write something for piano, I go and I study piano writing that I really like. And at the time I was writing this piece, I was really loving Charles Ives and his violin sonatas. They're just, if you haven't checked them out, Charles Ives, everyone thinks is very weird, but and some of his stuff is really hard to listen to. You use the word accessible at the beginning of this, and some of Charles Ives' stuff is not accessible even to me. But his violin sonatas are very accessible. Some of them he wrote. I think one he wrote for one of his kids. So this is some of the language in this is coming out of sort of the Charles Ives piano school, whatever that is.
Excellent. Let's give this a shot.
Yeah.
Just lovely. I want to encourage people, go to soundcloud.com and look for Bob Nieske. He's got a whole array of beautiful music there. So I could just listen to and all 4 movements, just a lot of fun, just great. Any final comments before we move to the next one? Because there's just so much I'd like to cover here.
Yeah, I mean, some things in that piece are, you just played a little bit of a snippet of it.
Yeah.
There are that piece does sort of take from both classical and jazz. The da 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 da. That's a ride cymbal beat. That's what a drummer plays in a swing tune. Bon do da do da da do da da. And then be dee da da do da da bo do da da is almost like a little folk song. And Ives always put in.
That's an 18th century hymn, Joe says. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
18th century hymn, yeah.
I didn't intend it to be.
Well, it's okay. You were inspired.
But it's the kind of thing that Ives would just throw in somewhere.
Yeah.
So I threw that in, and then the part where we just stopped, the flute goes back into the da do da do da do do, and the piano's going boot up da da boot up da da boot up. So it's like a little groove, almost like a little jazz groove.
Yeah.
And then there's a written out, Linda Bento Ray is not an improviser. So I essentially wrote out a solo.
Nice.
For her to play over the piano. So all of those things are getting kind of tossed around. Here again, it's solving a puzzle.
Yeah. I'm going to skip some stuff, but I do want to mention, I also love the fact that you have amazing, you have a lot of fun with the names of some songs, like this next one, Simple Flying. It's a great tongue twister, and it's a really nice high beat song. The Brush Off, which I thought was about someone being, turned down, but it's basically a play on the words of the brushing effect on the drums and the snare drum. I want to jump to Wolf Soup because this is actually, a couple of things. One is this highlights the 3 different CDs you have out. And was Wolf Soup the name of your band? Is that what that was?
That was the name of the band. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend named Sharon Wolf who was one of these people that you could take all of these, any kind of ingredients that you didn't think would go together, and she would make this amazing soup out of it. So I wrote it. Because the idea of having wolf soup kind of right. and that's kind of like the people in the band are all very different, but when you put them together, they it makes it's nourishing.
That's very cool. I do want to highlight this one image of you flying in the air, and there's a little story behind that. So tell me how that picture happened. You actually did that, right? That's not suspended with cables or anything.
No, that's real.
You actually jumped up like that, and they captured you. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, that's probably around the early 1990s. I was playing with a group called the Either Orchestra. That's another great title, which is still going strong. They're a terrific small big band that was around here back in the I played with them in the early 90s, and one of a friend of the leader of the band, Russ Gershon, was a photographer, and he was trying to put together an advertisement for his photography. And he said, I have this idea. I want to have a trumpet. It's going to be a photograph of a trumpet laying down and having little musicians being blown out of the end of the trumpet.
Great.
So he had, and he said, if you come and model for me, then you can use one of the pictures, for whatever you want. So I took my bass, and I'm wearing my suspenders and my hat and everything, and I was 30 years younger, and I just jumped up. I did that for about 45 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just jumping up in different ways.
Wow.
And that's one that worked. And if you notice
flying there, man, that's awesome. Yeah. So one of the pieces from here we're going to play next. And again, I apologize. This is a YouTube thing, so it may hit us with an ad. So my apologies in advance. Oh, no, good. By the way, I just noticed you have faces appearing in the lettering. I didn't see that before. So which are you here?
I'm the one let me see. You can't even see me on there.
Oh, you're not in there. Huh.
No.
Oh, maybe this is you. Kind of hidden
No,
a little bit.
that's Tom Hall.
Oh.
John Damien's on the left, Tom Hall, then Jimmy Cameron, and Nat McGavro. Maybe I'm in between the L and the F, and God. Didn't come through. Yeah.
Didn't come through. I love it. Well, anyway, that's wonderful. Let's do a few more here. We have
sure.
Heart. You want to talk about a little bit that's a very different thing.
Heart.
Yeah.
This is another one about stealing.
Inspired by.
Inspired. Well, Stravinsky said great composers, lesser composers borrow, great composers steal, or something.
Oh, okay.
Like that.
Then it's stealing.
So I'd like to call it stealing.
Okay.
This one is a combination of it starts off with the bass part in double stops, and if you remember Bob Dylan's tune, don't think twice, it's all right. You can sing that with the bass part. It works perfectly. So the bass part, I didn't really realize that until afterwards, but I was going for kind of a folksy kind of thing. And then the melody, the trumpet melody, do be dee dee do bo do be do. That was inspired by, to use your phrase, Fiddler on the Roof.
Really?
Da da dee 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 da da dee da da.
Okay.
I forget which. Some of the listeners would probably know which one. which it's definitely, it's a snippet of a Fiddler on the Roof tune.
Yeah.
And
Bob,
then,
why did you call it Heart? What's the background for that?
now this one here, it feels like that. It feels
Yeah.
like a loving kind of
Okay.
thing. And then the second part of the melody is be dee doo dee 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 do be dee dee do, and that's from Oscar Pettiford's tune Blues in the Closet. So just the melody of this and the bass part, you have Bob Dylan, Oscar Pettiford's tune Blues in the Closet, and Fiddler on the Roof.
I love it. I love it. Let's hear a little of this now. This is also YouTube, so brace yourselves. Might be some ads first.
You can fast forward a couple of minutes because he plays a long bass intro.
Oh, okay. By the way, Bob, is that you conducting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
And
a
then,
concert from the England Conservatory, the Conservatory Big Band.
These are all students, I assume, at the new conservatory.
Yep,
Yeah. Excellent. Okay.
yeah, good band.
Yeah. Very nice. Let's see if we can just grab one more here. I know it's almost 8 o'clock. I wanted to just point out some of these others, just the titles. There's a bus that's leaving soon for Allenberg's house.
Yep.
I love these titles, but I want to play a little of the stretch, especially this is
Sure.
the longer version that has a really wonderful string. And actually, the strings are actually stretching. I can feel the stretching of it, but maybe there's more of
Right.
the story to share before we go into it. You let me know. If you want
This is originally I had a trio of trumpet, bass, and drums, and we've played together quite a bit. And then, as I said about the sonata for violin, I met the Lydian String Quartet because I work at Brandeis and they're the house string quartet. So I thought I would try to do a project with my trio and the Lydian String Quartet. So I arranged some pieces of mine that I wrote originally just for trumpet, bass, and drums. I arranged them for string quartet plus that group. So that's why you're hearing this the string quartet here.
Yeah, excellent. Let me get that on here right now.
Oh, this
Oh,
is
no,
the
this is-
one without the strings. You
This is
want
not the one. Okay, hang on a second. I apologize.
That's all right.
I have it right here.
Yeah, it's the shorter one. I thought it was the longer one too.
Yeah.
That's probably the.
Here it is.
There it is. Yep.
Here we go.
Working out doesn't have to be this
I knew we
complicated.
were gonna-
That's why I make walking my
Muscle
workout.
is getting
With
in the way
Skechers'
with
new
forever.
workout walker. They're loaded with performance and comfort technology
All right.
to add more spring to your step.
Yeah.
Just put them on and walk. Try Skechers' new workout walker.
All right.
There you
I
go.
don't know why. can't thank you enough, Bob. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh,
I just
thank
wanted to ask
you.
the Lydian String Quartet. Now, does this mean that things are all done in Lydian scales in this, or that was just a kind of a name that was used?
That's just their cool name.
Yeah, it's a very cool name. Well, I want to thank you for your time. It's been very generous, and we spent some time prepping for this and everything, and I enjoyed a week's worth of listening to your music. I want to encourage people to, go to, just type in Bob Nieske online, but go to things like, the SoundCloud, and you probably have some other things as well. We can send some links to in the email follow-up on this for people. And again, I encourage you to buy the album. Send them an email and send $10, and let's get that going too. But thank you again. I just want to see if there's any questions at this point. I don't know. Let me get out of the share mode here so I can take a look at access at the chat. If there are not chat questions, then maybe I just want to open to the floor. Does anyone have a question they can unmute themselves and ask before we wrap up?
Doesn't
No? Okay.
like any questions.
Okay.
No? All right. Well, I can't thank you enough. It's been a lot of fun, and I know I'm going to spend some time this weekend trying to play those two hands.
There you go.
9 against 5. It's going to be kind of fun to see. But
Yeah.
that was really quite amazing.
Well, it's slow.
It'll do it really slowly, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Hillary. Thank you for setting this up. I want to thank the Jenks Center for allowing this to happen, and also the Cummings Foundation for the funding they do for this. And so I hope to see you all next month, and stay happy and enjoy music and spread the good word about this wonderful show. And thanks again to Bob.
Thank you. This has
Have a
been
great evening.
It's been great for me. Thank you both.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Okay.
Take care.